Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita. Today, we're looking at a really interesting study. It actually came through the virtual summer school in Entrepreneurship Research 2025.
Ah, yes. That's a great initiative.
It really is. It's completely free, running since 2021, so this is its fifth year. 5 sessions, 4 papers each, sometimes book reviews. It's quite something.
Definitely. And kudos to Professor Vishal K. Gupta and Athena Skiadopoulou at the University of Alabama for organizing it all. It's a fantastic resource.
Absolutely. So you brought us one of the papers from that program today, diving into crowdfunding, specifically what makes people actually lend on those prosocial platforms, where they aren't really expecting a financial return.
Exactly. It gets into the psychology of it all. The paper's called Crowdfunding in a Prosocial Microlending Environment, examining the role of intrinsic versus extrinsic cues. Allison and colleagues publish it in Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then is to unpack that. Figure out how the words entrepreneurs use in their loan requests, their stories, affect whether they get funded in this kind of charitable lending space.
That's the core of it, how language sways lenders.
Right. So where do we start to get our heads around this?
Well, I think it helps to step back first. Think about the situation before these big crowdfunding sites existed. How did entrepreneurs in poor regions even get capital?
Yeah, good point. Personal savings are obviously tough to build.
Yeah.
And relying on local networks or money lenders, that often means sky-high interest rates, right?
Exactly, serious drawbacks. So microlending came along as this really attractive alternative. The idea was small loans, no collateral needed, aimed at sparking entrepreneurship to fight poverty.
Giving people a leg up to build something themselves.
Precisely. And it's not small scale. We're talking over $25 billion in microloans globally since the mid-'70s.
Wow. That's significant impact.
Huge. But the big shift, the game changer, was the internet. Crowdfunding platforms suddenly opened the door to potentially millions of lenders, not just institutions.
And that's where the prosocial angle really kicks in, isn't it? You've got regular people deciding where to put their money.
Yes, and they're weighing things differently. It's not just about the business plan. It's also about, wanting to help. Charitable motives mixed with lending criteria.
So it's a hybrid model, in a sense.
Very much so. And central to all this on platforms like Kiva is the entrepreneur's narrative, their story.
Where they explain who they are, what the business is, what the loan's for, maybe some personal details too.
Exactly that. It's their pitch, their appeal directly to potential lenders.
Which brings us right to the core question of the research. How does the content of that narrative, the actual words used, make a loan seem more or less appealing? What grabs people?
And this is where the researchers bring in cognitive evaluation theory. It's a classic theory from Deci and Ryan. The basic idea is that if you offer external rewards for something someone is already intrinsically motivated to do, you might actually dampen that internal motivation.
Right, like paying a kid for grades might make them less interested in learning for its own sake.
Sort of, yeah. So contrast traditional investing, usually driven by potential profit, that's extrinsic, external.
Money back, basically.
Yeah, versus charitable giving, which is often driven by the good feeling you get from helping. That's intrinsic internal satisfaction.
Okay, I follow. But you said microlending is a mix.
It is, because there's the helping aspect, intrinsic, but maybe also a hope the loan gets repaid, the business succeeds, which leans a bit extrinsic.
So how does the theory handle that mix?
Well, cognitive evaluation theory links intrinsic motivation to basic psychological needs. The need for autonomy, feeling like you're in control, and competence, feeling effective.
Autonomy and competence. Okay.
And how rewards are interpreted matters. If a reward, or maybe just the outcome, makes you feel more competent or supports your sense of choice, it can boost intrinsic motivation.
Ah, so seeing the person succeed because of your loan would make you feel good, competent.
Exactly. But if the reward feels controlling, like you're only doing it for that external reason, it can undermine the intrinsic drive. Like, I'm just doing this to get my money back, might feel less satisfying than I'm helping this person.
That makes a lot of sense. Feeling pressured versus feeling helpful.
Precisely. And the researchers also fold in self-determination theory, which is an extension, adding a third need, relatedness, feeling connected to others.
Relatedness, so feeling close to the person you're potentially helping.
Yes. And when that need for relatedness is met, it also tends to boost intrinsic motivation. Feeling a connection makes you want to help more from the inside.
Okay, so bringing this back to microlending, what cues are lenders looking for in these stories based on these theories?
Well, remember, the Roots microfinance started to alleviate poverty through entrepreneurship. That goal shapes lender motivation. They're likely looking for cues that confirm their competence. My loan can genuinely help here, and align with their self-determination. I choose to help because I want to.
They want to feel their contribution matters, and it's their choice to make that impact.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with standard investing, where risk-reward analysis, the financial return, is front and center.
Right.
In a pro-social context, focusing too much on that financial stuff might feel a bit off. It could be seen as controlling, shifting focus away from the helping motive.
Okay, this is setting the stage perfectly. Let's get into the language itself. What did Allison and her colleagues actually measure in those narratives?
They broke it down into extrinsic and intrinsic cues based on word usage. For extrinsic, they looked first at profit language.
So words like gains, profitable, revenue, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And their hypothesis, H1A, was that more profit talk would actually decrease the loan's attractiveness to these pro-social lenders.
Less appealing if it sounds too much like a standard business pitch.
That was the idea and the findings. They supported it. More profit language correlated with the loan taking longer to get funded.
Interesting. So focusing on the money side didn't really help in this context. What else on the extrinsic side?
They also looked at risk-taking language. Words like risky, chance, bold. Hypothesis H1B was that this too would decrease attractiveness.
Lenders may be feeling their helping money was more likely to be lost.
Potentially, yes. And again, the data backed this up. More risk language meant slower funding times.
So the takeaway on extrinsic cues seems pretty clear. In this pro-social space, emphasizing profit or risk isn't the winning strategy.
It appears not, which shifts the focus to the intrinsic cues. What did work?
Yeah, what about appealing to that internal motivation?
First, they measured human interest language. This included words about family, friends, community, general human connection terms.
Okay, and the hypothesis, H2A.
Was that more human interest language would increase attractiveness, make the loan appeal stronger.
Which feels intuitive, right?
Yeah.
Connects to that relatedness need you mentioned.
Exactly. And the results strongly supported this. Narratives rich in human interest language got funded significantly faster, talking about family, community that resonated.
That makes sense. What other intrinsic cues did they test?
They also looked at diversity language, words suggesting the entrepreneur is unique, different, stands out from the crowd.
Highlighting individuality. What was the hypothesis there? H2B?
The hypothesis was that this would also increase attractiveness, maybe by making the entrepreneur feel more distinct and relatable in their uniqueness.
And the result?
This one was interesting. The hypothesis was not supported. More diversity language didn't reliably lead to faster funding.
Really? That's surprising. Why do you think that was? Or what did the researchers suggest?
They offered a couple of thoughts, maybe similarity or group identity cues, feeling like the entrepreneur is part of my community or a group I identify with, actually override the appeal of pure uniqueness in this context.
Like shared ground is more powerful than distinctiveness.
Could be. Or perhaps, relating back to that need for relatedness, talking about family and friends, is just a much more direct, potent way to build that connection than simply saying you're different.
So, here's my family might hit harder than I'm a unique individual doing X.
That seems to be what the data suggests, yes. The human connection aspect, especially through familiar bonds, was key.
Okay, so we have extrinsic cues, profit, risk having a negative effect, and intrinsic cues, human interest, having a positive one, while diversity was neutral. Did they look at the relative strength?
They did. Hypothesis 3 proposed that the overall positive effect of intrinsic cues would be larger than the overall negative effect of extrinsic cues.
Basically, that the good feelings motivation outweighs the business concerns demotivation in this setting.
Precisely. And the findings strongly supported this. The positive impact of intrinsic language was much, much larger, something like 5 times stronger than the negative impact of the extrinsic language.
Wow, 5 times. That really underscores the power of appealing to those helping instincts.
It absolutely does. It shows that for these lenders, the desire to connect and make a difference seems to be the primary driver, far more than traditional investment logic.
That's a really clear finding. Can you briefly touch on how they did this study, the scale of it?
Sure. It was quite large scale. They used data from kiva.org, a major player in prosocial microlending.
I've heard of Kiva.
Yeah, very well known.
Right.
They analyzed over 36,000 loan requests from entrepreneurs in 51 different countries.
That's a lot of data. Did they read every single story?
No, that would be impossible. They use computer-aided text analysis. LIWC, linguistic inquiry, and word count is a common tool for this.
Software that scans the text for specific types of words based on preset dictionaries?
Exactly. Dictionaries for profit, risk, family, community, uniqueness, and so on. It counts the frequency of those word types.
Clever. And how did they measure attractiveness? What was the outcome variable?
The key measure was time to funding. How many days it took for a loan request to reach its funding goal on the platform.
Simple enough. Faster funding equals more attractive to the lender community.
That was the logic, yes. Controlling for other factors like loan size, country, etc.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what are the main takeaways? If an entrepreneur is writing one of these loan requests, what should they keep in mind?
The big one is, frame your story around the opportunity for lenders to help, to connect, to make a difference. Emphasize the human element, the community impact, the personal story. That intrinsic appeal is powerful.
And maybe dial back the purely business-focused language. Let's talk about revenue projections and market share.
It seems that way, yes.
Yeah.
Focusing too heavily on the extrinsic cues, profit potential, risk assessment not only doesn't help as much, it might even slightly hinder funding speed in this pro-social environment.
It also has implications for the platforms themselves, doesn't it?
Definitely. If you start introducing too many extrinsic rewards, like, say, gamification with points for lending, or shifting to a model where lenders earn significant interest, you risk undermining that core intrinsic motivation.
You might actually reduce participation by making it feel less like helping and more like a transaction.
That's the potential danger highlighted by this research. Over-incentivizing financially could paradoxically crowd out the goodwill that drives the platform.
It makes you think about other types of crowdfunding too, like reward-based or equity crowdfunding, which obviously have stronger extrinsic elements.
Right. Those models inherently blend intrinsic, I want to support this cool project company, and extrinsic, I get a reward equity stake. This study suggests finding the right balance is crucial there too.
Fascinating stuff. So the core message, really, is that in pro-social microlending, the heart matters more than the wallet, so to speak. Connecting with the person trumps focusing on the profit.
That's a great way to put it. The human connection seems to be the strongest currency.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. How might these ideas apply elsewhere? When you're trying to get support for something, especially something for social good, are you focusing more on explaining the tangible rewards, the what, or are you focusing more on building that connection, that shared purpose, the why?
That's a really potent question, something to definitely reflect on.
If you want to dive deeper into the methodology and stats, the Allison et al. Paper in ETP is the place to go. Thanks so much for unpacking this with us today.
My pleasure. It was a great discussion. And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.